Well, what was your favorite no more nationwide injunctions moment? Mine was Amy Coney Barrett all but calling Ketanji Brown Jackson mentally challenged and legally illiterate, and 5 other justices signing on to that opinion in agreement. That Supreme Court decision was issued just a month ago, June 27th. No more nationwide injunctions from district court judges after they've exceeded their constitutional and legislative authority in dozens of challenges to Trump policies, and some against Biden prior to be fair. But I guess we'll just have to settle for that brief entertainment moment from the bench, because at least for now, it looks like the intended legal moment isn't actually happening. A district court judge is right back at it again, blocking policy nationally, except this time it's blocking law passed by Congress, not just presidential executive action. So it's even more intrusive, actually. And instead of judicial restraint, we just get a confusing paradox. You better listen to the court, this judge says, while herself not listening to the court, disregarding that Supreme Court decision from June. And it is a little trickier than that, because there is some argument about why a nationwide injunction may apply in this case, but fundamentally, this is yet another episode of a judge assuming legislative and executive function beyond the boundaries of her district on the furthest possible stretches of constitutional reach. What we're talking about in practice is now the continued forced funding of Planned Parenthood, at least for the time being. Despite Congress's intent and the president's signature on the law to stop that, Massachusetts District Court Judge Indira Talwani issued the order Monday. While the legal challenge plays out, your taxpayer checks to Planned Parenthood have to keep clearing. Part of the big, beautiful bill that passed earlier this month is an effort to defund Planned Parenthood by restricting their access to Medicaid reimbursement. Now, technically, no federal funds can go to abortion directly, but since Planned Parenthood provides a wide array of healthcare services, they still get reimbursed for services provided to Medicaid recipients. And so, in effect, we all pay the country's biggest abortion provider to sustain itself, even though technically, on paper, we do not pay for the abortions. We just pay the company that does the abortions. And many in Congress don't like that. They want to undo that. They want to cut Planned Parenthood's public money. And so that's what they did with this law. As a technical matter, constitutionally, you can't single out a particular person or group like that. You can't say, we pay all providers of Medicaid eligible services, just not you, because we hate you specifically. So Congress did not do that, and not because it's some workaround, but because they care about abortion. It's not about getting Planned Parenthood specifically. They just happen to sit on the abortion throne. They are the country's biggest provider. But if someone else replaces them, Congress still doesn't want Medicaid money going to abortion providers. So Congress said, we're not giving Medicaid money to prohibited entities this budget year. What are prohibited entities? Well, they are 501c3 family planning and reproductive health nonprofits that provide elective abortions, not in cases of rape or incest or life of the mother, but aborting babies for convenience reasons. And only those entities that are receiving more than $800,000 a year in Medicaid money. Yes, that would mean Planned Parenthood, but there are other large abortion providers that are now also facing potential Medicaid disqualification. And you may like that policy, or you may not. You may want pom-poms to cheer or tomatoes to throw, but when and how to spend federal money is a political question reserved for Congress. They have the constitutional power of the purse. This is what Congress wants. The president signed it into law. Nobody has a constitutional right to a single public dollar. So on what constitutional basis is this judge blocking this policy and forcing everyone to pay Planned Parenthood anyway? But before we get to those supposed constitutional reasons, let's back up one step prior. On what basis is this judge blocking this policy nationally? I thought we were done with that. Well, technically, in Amy Coney Barrett's majority opinion in the Trump v. Casa decision that limited these nationwide injunctions from district court judges, she didn't say no nationwide injunctions ever. She said they can happen only when the injunction is necessary to provide complete relief to the person or organization suing. Since this suit comes from the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, a national organization, this judge is saying the injunction applies everywhere the business operates. And for Planned Parenthood, that is in some form in every state, though of course they don't have abortion clinics in every state. But this is a national organization, so they need national relief while this case plays out. That's the idea. It's not an overbroad injunction. It's just a very broad organization. Okay, fine. maybe that makes sense, but the problem is that premise is then contradicted by the rest of the lawsuit's argument. And the rest of the argument, suddenly Planned Parenthood is not a national organization anymore. Now it's just a collection of a bunch of loosely associated affiliates, but completely separate business entities. In part, Planned Parenthood is making the argument that this law violates the First Amendment's protection of free association. Now, that right isn't explicitly stated in the constitutional text, but it has been long recognized by the courts. You can't be penalized for who you're friends with, or who you hang out with, or who you do legal business with. And that's what Planned Parenthood says is happening here. Oh, you're not actually stopping abortion funding, Congress. You're penalizing our clinics, many of which don't actually provide abortion, only because they're associated with other clinics that do. Okay, so for the purpose of getting the injunction, you're all one big happy family, clearly in need of collective protection, because you're all basically the same business operation. But the argument to win the case is that you're all just a bunch of separate people who sometimes hang out, sure, but you're totally independent business operations. These arguments sound a lot more convenient than they do principled. Oh, but that's not all of the First Amendment violations, Planned Parenthood says. This is a double whammy. This is policing association based on speech, based on viewpoint. See, because the Planned Parenthood Federation is just a loosely associated national organization, it doesn't actually have any clinics. And it doesn't actually provide any abortions. It only advocates for abortions. So now Congress is punishing these affiliate clinics not because they provide abortions, some don't in accordance with state law or just the market, but they're punishing them because of association with an advocacy organization, not a fetal butcher shop. Because if a serial killer incorporates into several different tax entities before he goes on his spree, has he really even murdered anyone at all? It takes top legal scholars to answer these difficult moral questions. But okay, the idea here is not that anybody is owed federal Medicaid money beyond congressional authorization. They are not. The idea is that if Congress is going to spend Medicaid or any other federal money, they cannot do so in a way that discriminates based on viewpoint or association. The problem is, the law says nothing like that. The law does not say if you cheer, yay abortions, or if you're friends with people who high-five women who get abortions, we won't pay you. It says if your organization provides abortions, we're out. That is a distinction based on conduct, not viewpoint or association. And that conduct is conducted by this organization at a larger volume than any other in the country. Planned Parenthood is setting abortion records, over 400,000 annually, while they also set records for public money received. And no matter how you organize the business legally, that is the bottom line reality of the operation. There is a pile of public money right next to the pile of dead babies, and Congress, duly elected by the people, says enough of that. Okay, but what about targeting? This is actually Planned Parenthood's primary argument. Congress cannot make a law targeting a specific group or a specific person. The law has to apply equally to everyone. It's called a Bill of Attainder, and it's prohibited by Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Planned Parenthood has paired this with an appeal based on the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of equal protection of the law. We're being singled out, Planned Parenthood says. Sure, you didn't write "fuck Planned Parenthood" into the law, but many members of Congress said things like that while they worked on it, and the definition of a prohibited entity is a set of specific characteristics that almost uniquely apply to Planned Parenthood. That's not legal, they say. Well, again, it's a question of behavior versus identity. What you do versus who you are. Within that theme, the Supreme Court has defined what bills of attainder are and are not in a few decisions. In 1946, the Supreme Court established its test on the matter. They said unconstitutional bills of attainder have three characteristics. One, they specifically identify the people to be punished. That's clearly not the case here. Congress deliberately established criteria that apply to anybody. They did not name Planned Parenthood. Two, they impose punishment. Well, there's a consequence here, but is it punishment? Revoking Medicaid money is not punishment like putting you in prison insofar as it's not depriving you of a right. It's just not paying you. And three, this punishment is imposed without the benefit of a trial. Well, is there actually punishment here? If not, that question is moot. But if there is punishment that would require trial, what would the matter for trial even be? Hey, give me your wallet. That sounds a lot more like you mugging somebody else, actually. One question the court has also considered in evaluating Bill of Attainder claims is, can the supposedly targeted person or organization escape the targeting? Can you just not do the behavior regulated and then avoid the application of the law? Because if so, it's hard to argue that the law is targeting you personally when you could just adjust and avoid. If I'm a serial killer who says, hey, those murder laws are targeting me, not really, because I could just not murder and the law will no longer be enforced against me. And that's exactly the argument that appears in this judge's Planned Parenthood injunction order. Could Planned Parenthood avoid this law's effect by just not aborting babies anymore? Yeah, that's what the law wants, actually. Oh, but doing that would kneecap the entire organization, the judge writes. Well, yes, that's the point. Just like murder laws kneecap the serial killer, these are laws against certain behaviors. Change your behavior and you'll be in compliance with the law. And that's not just a rule for you, it's a rule for everybody. And it's the nature of almost every law in the books. Somehow, killing babies went from just a very small piece of Planned Parenthood's much broader overall function to actually their entire business depends on it, to actually it's a core piece of who they are as people. You can't just ask them to stop killing babies any more than you can ask them to change their race or their sex or their height. Some of those things are more changeable now, actually, but they were born, ironically, to stop others from being born. And it's not just that you can't ask them to stop. You have to pay them to keep doing it too, because if they offer any Medicaid-covered service, they must be allowed to do this so-called service too. Because after all, anything less would cause adverse health consequences where this care is disrupted, the judge says. Hence the need to stop this policy change during the court challenge to avoid irreparable harm in the meantime. Yeah, I don't know. The supposed harm of stopping payments seems pretty reparable, actually. If there are debts acquired during this legal dispute, those debts can be collected once the dispute is resolved. Just do some bookkeeping. And if Planned Parenthood can't survive as a business without the constant flow of government bucks in the meantime, well, that is also a problem for them to repair too. It is not the public's responsibility to sustain their finances to keep them operational. And of course, there is plenty of irreparable harm in this solution that's supposed to prevent it. It's just a question of to whom. There is permanent, irreparable harm, as in death, for those inconvenient things we don't count as people while Planned Parenthood continues their operation. And there's more irreparable harm in the taxpayer funding that action. Even if I do get some refund later, my money still made that irreparable harm possible. But because of the supposed imminent irreparable harm of Planned Parenthood having an accounting problem, and because of this judge's opinion that Planned Parenthood's arguments are likely to succeed on challenge, this Judge Talwani has issued her nationwide injunction. Planned Parenthood will be paid. But like everything else in her reasoning, even that prospect at success is highly questionable. When was the last time a law was overturned on Bill of Attainder grounds? 1965, not for decades. Almost never in history, very rarely when it has. And as far as the First Amendment arguments on viewpoint or association or the Fifth Amendment argument on equal protection, it's very hard to argue this law is not about conduct when you can just change your conduct and avoid the scope of the law. It is not about who your friends are or what your opinions are. It is about the simple fact that you kill babies and then hold out your hand for our money. Always has been, always will be. If you stop doing that, you can have whatever friends you want, you can have whatever opinions you want, and you will not face punishment from the government. So personally, I would put Planned Parenthood's likelihood of success with this challenge as something closer to a fetal chance at their clinic. Not good. Once appealed through the Supreme Court, Congress's defunding measure will likely stand, and once again, a loony district court judge will have stopped perfectly legal policy based on nothing but her whim. And the problem is, as rare as her reasoning may be in Supreme Court case law, the accountability mechanism is deployed maybe even more rarely. Judicial impeachment is an almost never event. Only 8 federal judges have been removed from the bench in the 230 plus years since the federal judiciary was established in 1789. It's not going to happen. So the practical solution is probably just reciprocal fingers and ears. If this judge is going to look at the Supreme Court and say, la, 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 I can't hear you, well, then CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, should do the same. Oh, We have to make deposits into the Planned Parenthood account, do we? Well, watch us not. What are you going to do, lady? Come down here and make us? Please, come try to beat up RFK Jr. and see what happens. Although, I guess it's technically Dr. Oz who runs CMS specifically. And I am less confident in him. He did lose to John Fetterman after all. But hey, that Frankenstein monster is a tough draw in any fight. And I'm pretty sure even an ogre-battered Dr. Oz can still handle this lady and get his confidence back. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams as live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Come on. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, that means you probably found some value in the video. If you found some value in the video, please consider supporting my material. You can do that one time or recurring for as little as $1 a month. It not only helps me sustain, but it helps me pay the people who make my videos possible. Linked in the description for you, mattchristiansenmedia.com/support. Thanks for listening.